Second channel wrestling content? I couldn't think of a better fucking idea myself. Well, I thought of it myself, so there we go. But this is a thing I want to do on the second channel. We got to talk about some more wrestling. Hopefully there will be some wrestling main channel videos soon. We'll see how those go over. I don't expect them to go over very well. But here on the second channel, anything goes. You're getting all the shit content. Because where else would I put it? Not on the main channel anymore. That's why this fucking thing exists. This will be one of the first videos going out on the second channel. Actually, the first one I'm recording, but don't tell anybody. So recently, now I've fallen off this like the last 2 weeks, but there was a point about 2 weeks ago for about, I don't know, how many matches are on here? Probably like 15 or so. For like a few weeks, I was basically watching one wrestling match a day in an attempt to make this match rating index we've got here. Where I want to go back, because there are a lot of matches I hadn't seen in a long time. A lot of the newer stuff I don't pay that much attention to, unless it's New Japan, and we'll get into that here. It's just WWE matches, and a lot of WrestleMania matches that we'll be going over today. As this progresses, this hopefully will be a series where I go through basically all the matches I rewatch, and then I'm going to rank them, so then we can have this index of my thoughts on a bunch of wrestling matches, and go back and reference them and see what's what. That's the conceit of this video series, so I don't know what I'm going to call it. I might call it like rating every match I've ever seen or whatever. But basically, this has to be a rewatch. Oh no, it couldn't be a first time viewing. It was for a few of these matches. And just assessing my thoughts with the perspective of me now rather than me 5 years ago when I last watched a bunch of these matches. We'll probably just go in order of order of watching, which is the order they are down here. Maybe I should organize them differently. Maybe I should organize them by star ratings. We're going to do traditional wrestling out of 5 stars. I don't think I'm going to do half stars. Though maybe, I think there actually might be. I'm not sure. No, there isn't. At some point I'd rated something like 3.5 stars or something, but I changed it. How much more intro opening shit do you want? Do we want to go through wrestling history or whatever? Not really. I'm sure it'll all come up as we progressively go through. I want to go through all the matches on here in this first part, so I don't know how long it will specifically be. I feel like I should be doing more intro, so I'm kind of stopping myself from continuing, but should I be doing that? What is the moral option? We've got to think here. I think so. Hopefully I just start doing this again where I'm watching basically one episode, one match a day, and then we can talk about a bunch of matches for second installments, third installments, fourth installments, and so on of this series. You may as well start. Now, this actually was one I watched like a week before I actually started doing this, which was Brock Lesnar versus John Cena from Summerslam 2014. This is a famous match. Forrest referenced this in one of his videos. He does scripted wrestling videos, Forrest Sauer. Currently on Ring of Honor now. He's moved away from New Japan. He's sick of that shit. But he referenced this in one of his videos about like subverting expectations in wrestling and how this match was one of the chief examples of subverting expectations in wrestling. Did he call it a 5-star match just because of this in his video, or is that something else I read or something? I can't entirely remember. But this match, so I was really curious how everything happened on this fateful night in 2014 when basically the next 5 years, the next 7 years of wrestling would basically be shaped in this one night. Symbolically, this match means a lot more than it really is. I gave it 4 stars. This match has a reputation. There's going to be people that don't know anything about wrestling who are just watching my shit. This match, wrestling has this appeal, right? It has 2 main appeals to me that's kind of different to most people that are into wrestling. There's this history aspect of wrestling as such an ongoing canon, if you will, of stuff that contradicts itself all the time, doesn't make a lot of sense. Stories don't work like traditional stories. There's not usually a beginning, middle, and end because outside factors affect wrestling so much. If something isn't doing well, drawing crowds, then they might just axe a feud and cut it in the middle and go in a different direction. If stars, you're building up. If you start the character arc of a character and you want them to be the next fucking big thing, like talking about Brock Lesnar, that was his catchphrase at some point, but it doesn't seem like it's working, or 2 weeks in you're like, fuck this shit, of an 18-week journey, the bookers can just say, well, fuck this, let's ignore that, and we'll never see that character again. There's also injuries affect it because it's a real performance art or sport, so injuries can derail this shit. There's so much weird shit that can affect it in that regard. And in that comes this winding history of understanding where these two guys came from and how that interludes in the match. And the better wrestling matches will involve that sort of stuff in the match. The commentators will bring it up, the build up to a match. Also, wrestling is structured on a pay-per-view basis, where especially in the WWE, every month they have a pay-per-view, so the TV shows are more building to that, and then the big things happen at the pay-per-views, and then there's the big 4 pay-per-views each year, the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series, where bigger matches happen, WrestleMania being the biggest. The Royal Rumble is more of the Royal Rumble match is going to happen, you don't need to build it up that much. SummerSlam is sort of the WrestleMania of the summer, WrestleMania is usually in a stadium. All of these are like just sort of general things you have to know. And then the second big thing for me is crowd, which sucks because we don't really have crowds like we used to because of pandemic stuff. But crowd reaction, and the crowd can sell a match. We're going to talk about a few matches that are like that later on, where it's just like, and a lot of people, and a lot of wrestling critics or whatever, people who talk about wrestling online in scripted or non-scripted videos, there's a whole wrestling YouTube to itself, just like there's a Pokemon YouTube and an anime YouTube and all this stuff. Especially Forrest and like Joseph Montesilio, two like big prominent video essayist wrestling people that I really like. They don't seem to care about this as much. They're more about how a match tells a story, or how like generally a company operates, or things like this, where if a crowd is going crazy, I'm going to like it regardless if it makes sense or nothing at all, because the main purpose of wrestling, the main appeal of wrestling to me, is playing off of the crowd, and that feeding into this sort of chill-inducing experience that you can sort of feed off and get adrenaline off of and go, fuck, this is cool. Which is sort of what I go for. And that relates to this match directly, because I wanted to go back and see how the crowd reacted to this as it was happening, because this is such a pivotal event in the minds of wrestling fans, really. What was it actually like on that night? Now, Brock Lesnar, of course, is a big MMA star. Now I'm going to explain the history of the match. Again, we're doing this for people who, I guess, don't watch wrestling. Brock Lesnar was... so much to go into here. Brock Lesnar... What did I write down? Because I did little notes under it. A meme, a turning point for the professional wrestling industry is just what I said. Brock Lesnar was a big WWE star, and then he basically, after like a year and a half of them putting everything behind him, he left because he wanted to pursue first football, which he kind of, I think, he got like cut or whatever. I was going to say failed at, but that's very harsh. And then he ended up in the UFC, and he became a mega star there, heavyweight champion. I don't know anything about UFC at all. So, and then eventually he came back in 2012 to the WWE. At the time when he was in WWE, he said he basically the real reason is he just couldn't handle the schedule. Basically, he hated it. He was really good at wrestling. He came in the beginning of 2002, which is the start of sort of this down period for wrestling. The big period for the wrestling was the Attitude Era, as we know it. Starts at the end of 97 and goes through until like 2002, when he debuted at 2002. Sort of ends with the brand split, as people know it, sort of the marking of two different eras. So like Brock Lesnar wasn't exactly a box office hit, but they successfully made him into a pretty big star. And just Brock Lesnar is massive and huge, and he's an intimidating presence, and all this matters in wrestling a lot. And Lesnar had some really great matches. Probably the best matches in his career happened in that period. Then he leaves, and then he comes back, and his aesthetic is very different now. He's got a lot more tattoos, the sword one in his chest, he looks different, and now he's a fighter character in wrestling. He was just like a wrestler dude. He was like, in tights, he was massive. But now he has like this sense of realism to him because he was in the UFC. So he comes back and he's in like fight shorts and gloves and shit like that. So he's got like a different character, and his approaches to matches also became strikingly different. But not really until after this very match. Because since then, Brock Lesnar has been known to have these very quick, very short, everybody hits their finisher and then goes home matches, where some Brock Lesnar matches unironically take 18 seconds, like with Kofi or whatever. And the Goldberg matches, and like these shocking, like, sit down, no Brock Lesnar matches going for more than 10 minutes anymore, where he used to, like, he literally had a 60-minute match with Kurt Angle on SmackDown that everybody loves. It's this, so he's sort of this change, and it starts here. Now, with John Cena specifically, everybody hates John Cena, basically, in the hardcore wrestling community. This is sort of his journey. He was underneath Brock Lesnar when Brock Lesnar was coming up. They came up in, like, the same OVW training class, and the company chose Lesnar, and then Lesnar left, and then, like, the year after Lesnar left, Cena then rises to prominence, becomes the face of the company that Lesnar was supposed to be. So there's all this sort of, like, underlying, like, the reason why we have John Cena, who we all hate, is because Brock left. And John Cena is like the change of the guard into the PG-ish era of wrestling. There's so much like mindset going into this for why the hardcore fans would be like very weird coming into this match. Also, like 6 months prior, Lesnar broke the Undertaker streak at Mania that got him mega heat. Also, Cena just won the belt back. This is the end of Cena's run, as we would come to learn. I don't know why I'm explaining all this history. All this goes into this. It's basically, this is a massive turning point of Brock Lesnar changes forever after this. And John Cena, really, this is his last night as the top guy in WWE. This is his literal last time. After this, he would win the championship again, but he'd only hold it for a month, and this was in between filming movies. In 2017, he'd win it again. Through all of 2015, which was his last period on the road full-time with the WWE, he had the United States Championship, and it was a big meme. The Open Challenge thing, everybody liked that. But, like, this is the last time. And it's so weird that Brock Lesnar unseats Cena in this, and Cena really never gets back to that spot, not because he's not good or because the company gives up on him, but just because he focuses on other things, on his sort of Hollywood career. And Brock Lesnar adapts this brand new, like, persona of, like, destroying people in matches rather than having competitive matches. The meme about this match, I haven't even explained yet, is that Brock Lesnar destroys John Cena for 20 minutes, then pins him. And this is a big subversive thing, because basically every John Cena match had been criticized for the last, 10 years? At this point in 2014, for every main event match in the WWE for fucking 10 years was John Cena gets beat up for 20 minutes, then he does a comeback, and then he wins. Super Cena was his nickname that everybody shit on him for. He would basically get the shit beaten out of him, then suddenly would come back out of nowhere and win. Kind of not really true. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, as in future episodes, because there's not that many John Cena matches that I watched for this. And also, after this, people would say Cena got a lot better in the ring because he sort of got away from this style. There's also this thing that John Cena never lost. He just won all the time, which pissed people off too. Also, Brock Lesnar's first match back in 2012 was against John Cena, and it was sort of this, like, we have a massive star coming in, and John Cena just beat Brock Lesnar, the legitimate UFC dude, in like a street fight match, and it was like everybody was kind of weirded out about that. It was sort of like Brock has to come back and do the job to learn the lesson that we haven't fully forgiven him as the WWE yet, so we booked him to lose. Again, it's like, and comparing that match to this match, and just how, like, this is what should have happened the first time, and that's sort of the story going into the match. But, like, also this is Brock Lesnar wins the belt here. This is for the WWE Championship. And then it sort of starts this era of Brock Lesnar being the world champion. And because Brock Lesnar is a part-timer and he's not on the road full-time and he only shows up, like, every 3 months, the championship would just disappear from TV, which initially people really liked, and then people began to hate as it, like, because it, like, happened it's still, like, happening now. It hasn't happened since Mania last year. But, like, Brock Lesnar has been a sort of world champion. The WWE in 2016 had a second world championship. But one of the two he's had basically since this period. And it's just sort of like the championship is never on TV consistently and all this sort of stuff. The match itself, it kind of drags a little bit. Like, if you were watching it the first time in 2014, your mind would be blown. You wouldn't understand anything you're seeing. I didn't watch it live back then, 2014. I didn't even know if I was keeping up with wrestling that much. I would always record Raw and SmackDown on our Foxtel box, but I'd usually just speed through a lot of it, especially in these sort of periods, especially when I was younger, and I would have been 13 when this match happened. I was a smark already. I already hated John Cena and all that, was watching wrestling YouTube. But, like, I would get more invested around Rumble and Mania time than I would in, like, the SummerSlam era of the year. So I was coming in and out. So I can't remember what my reaction at the time was. I didn't watch the match live. But I had a similar experience with Lesnar versus Goldberg in 2016 at Survivor Series, which is, like, the opposite of this match where Lesnar loses in, like, 60 seconds, which I couldn't fucking believe my eyes. I was standing up screaming about it. It was insane. So I imagine that's the similar feeling you get here. In terms of the match and the crowd reaction, there's some very vocal John Cena fans that are very pissed off that this is happening, and they try to start a boring chant. I remember this from the match. But otherwise, it's also a complete fuck up on the WWE standpoint, because they have this monster heel who beat the streak, Brock Lesnar, and then they come into SummerSlam and they have him destroy John Cena, and he's, for the next whole year, is the biggest babyface in the company. So you've basically squandered beating the streak. Now, the original plan for this event was probably to have Lesnar destroy Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan should have been champion, but he gets injured after he wins the belt a month later. So that would have been incredible. I think about that timeline of reality so much, where Lesnar destroys Daniel Bryan in 20 minutes, just suplexing him 15 times in 2014. And the monster heel that could have been, that Roman maybe could have beaten at Mania in the next year, and then everything is different with wrestling history, at least recent history. And it would have been very interesting. But it's just Lesnar becomes a monster babyface in this night. I also think the next month they have a rematch and they just ignore this, and Cena just beats up Lesnar for a bunch, and then we act again the next time Lesnar has a match. I believe is at the Royal Rumble in a triple threat match that everybody loves. They haven't rewatched yet, but it probably will be a match we rewatch for this index. And then from then on, Lesnar just acts like this monster the entire time, where he beats the shit out of whoever he's wrestling, and that's sort of his gimmick. I don't know how much what more we have to say. The match itself is, again, they build it up like it's the commentators saying big fight feel, which I think this is one of the first times they say that, but they say that in every fucking main event constantly. It feels grand. It feels like a changing point. It feels like a turning point. Everything before and after wrestling was kind of changed by this match, even if the ramifications weren't felt initially. Cena will never be this prominent again in a full-time capacity. Lesnar will act like this for the next 7 years. It's just sort of yeah. And I was also thinking while watching this match, if you skip forward to SummerSlam the next year, we are in full modern WWE mode. This is sort of the last bastion of sort of that PG John Cena on top CM Punk era, going into the now Shield-ish era of Shield and NXT and the Women's Revolution and things like that. Because if you skip forward a year, now it's SummerSlam weekend. The first takeover event outside of Full Sail is happening. Sasha and Bayley revolutionized women's wrestling in Western spaces forever. The main event is it's Brock and Undertaker, but the championship match is Cena challenging Seth Rollins, who's now the champion. Roman and Dean are versing the Wyatt family on the undercard. They're big stars. It's just there's a lot different. And then if you go 2 years later, it's Finn versus Seth in the main event. The Demon is coming out. It's the second NXT takeover. Johnny Gargano is around doing shit on that fucking takeover or whatever. Shinsuke would be around at that point. We're fully in modern, WWE now has every indie guy you've ever heard of. We're in full-time different. It just is this is the end of an era. Byron Saxton is going to be on commentary the next SummerSlam. A lot is different. A lot has changed. The old era is out. And even if you have to, it's not an immediate turning point. It's not the next Raw, everything was changed. But progressively, this really is when things start to trend in a different direction. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad, but there you have it. It is a turning point in professional wrestling industry, at least in the WWE. The ramifications can still be felt today. And it's a pretty good, it's almost a must watch in that regard. The match itself, I don't know. The crowd doesn't... I remembered watching this at some point in the past, obviously after it happened, not live, where I remembered the crowd was on fire the whole match and everybody was super excited. Brock was beating up Cena. The finish gets everybody very excited. There's a big pop when Brock finally pins him at the end. A lot of the big spots, but there are periods in the match where Lesnar is just beating on him, walking around the ring strutting, where it's sort of the crowd is kind of silent. And not in the I'm so shocked, just in sort of well, this is happening again sort of way. They would figure out this Brock formula where it's all right, just have him go 5 minutes with the dude when he's going to do this to them, not 20. How long was this match actually? Did it hit 20 minutes or did it just feel like that? Because that's not necessarily a good thing. So SummerSlam 2014. Let's bring up the fucking wiki. Also, Roman and Randy is their semi-main event, and sort of Roman gets a big victory there. Again, the turning point thing. The Shield is just broken up at this point. It's only 16 minutes. It feels a lot longer than that, I must say. Wyatt's versus Jericho, Stephanie and Brie Bella, sort of a big women's storyline. Kind of the last bastion of the weird, like, women freak show storylines. Dolph and The Miz. I forget Rob Van Dam had that comeback. Paige and AJ, sort of the beginnings. Paige is around at this point. Rusev is around at this point. Like, we're starting to see, like, the new era of stars roll through. But yes, I think that's all we have to say about that. I gave it 4 stars, kind of for historical importance and things like that. I think it earns the 4-star rating. Let's move on. Then, for the actual beginning, where I was like, all right, let's watch one match every day, I wanted to start with Taker versus Michaels. Now, I actually was listening to Jericho's podcast where he talked about the referee of this match, and they rewatched it and they talked about it throughout. That's initially what got the ball running. I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch the fucking Taker versus Michaels one again, and then it spiraled into what we are doing here today. I'm proud to admit that this match is as good as people say. This match is sort of heralded as the greatest match of all time, especially in WWE history. I feel like if you've ever had a tangential interest in wrestling, you've probably heard about this match, WrestleMania 25, Taker Michaels, 2009. I remember hearing about this at the time. This was, I would have been, 8 at the time? And, like, the Raws after this Mania, like, everybody... I feel like this is the first Mania I remember that I was, like, actively remember watching Raws for, like, in the lead up and afterwards. This is around the era where I don't just have spotty memories of sort of the storylines going in like I do for a lot of the previous Manias, as far back as, like, 22, because I would have been 5 then. But yeah, I remember, like, being excited that Christian won the Money in the Bank this night. Wait, no, he was in the Money in the Bank. CM Punk wins the Money in the Bank this night, but I remember the finish being him kicking Christian off the ladder and things like that. The Hardy Boys feud at this point. I was really starting to get into it. And my wrestling, like, as a kid, this is sort of the peak era of my wrestling fandom, going into 2010 with TNA especially, and then moving forward there. But yeah, so I have memories of when this match happened and everybody raving about it, especially on Raw. The only note I have here is the crowd is insane. I don't know where to start or where to end with this match. I plan on doing a scripted video about this match, maybe. There's just... It feels like it comes out of nowhere, sort of. There's not like a big storyline to this match. These two are like legends at this point, both over 40, I believe. They had a feud back when they were way younger that was iconic with the first Hell in a Cell match, the casket match that ends up injuring Shawn Michaels, leaves him on the shelf for 4 years. So there is a lot of history there. It's not really referenced in the build-up to the match. The build-up to the match is basically like, these two legends don't have anything to do at WrestleMania. Fuck it. The Undertaker streak is starting to become a thing at this point. It has been a thing at this point, but it hasn't become like the marketing fucking thing that it will become because of this match. The match the previous year was with Edge, and the match the year before was with Batista. 2 big stars. And Edge in his pre-match promo at WrestleMania 24 talks about that, about how, like, he talks about the streak and how the streak is going to die. I went because there's a lot of Undertaker matches, WrestleMania matches, even the Flair match. Not that Flair match, but the Flair Taker match in 2002. They're mentioning the streak. Taker has never lost at WrestleMania. It's not exactly said with respect back then because Taker's a big fucking heel, and JR saying that big prick hasn't lost at WrestleMania. Aren't we scared for old Ric Flair? But yeah, but the build-up is very just kind of there, and then the entrances are iconic at this point because everything about this 40-minute period in which the entrances, the match, and the aftermatch of the match takes place is all, like, famous, and everybody talks about it constantly. Shawn Michaels descends from a high platform down to the stage and then walks to the ring. Undertaker rises up from the bottom. Heaven versus hell. Shawn Michaels is a very godly man. He prays on his way to the ring every match. The Undertaker is obviously a spooky man, so he comes from hell. And it's good, the little juxtaposition there. They walk to the ring, and then they have the greatest match of all time. The crowd is immediately into it. It's just sort of this organic thing of there's not a big storyline here. With the second match we'll talk about in a second, there is a big storyline, which is basically the last match we had was incredible. Let's do it again. Undertaker doesn't want to. Shawn Michaels does, and he'll do anything to get the match again. And we have a bunch of storylines interfering in Elimination Chamber matches and all that to get to that match. But for this one, it just feels right. It feels like it intrinsically clicks from the get-go of, like, the entrances are really cool. They both come to the ring. The commentators are on fire. I think it is King, JR, and Michael Cole. JR takes the reins here. I have a shit ton of praise to give to JR throughout this entire thing. People kind of shit on him now on, like, Dynamite for not being the greatest. Back here, he's on fucking fire, and he's really good. The way they talk everything up, I think they do mention that The Undertaker has never beaten Shawn Michaels coming into this match, which you think back to it, and holy fuck, that's correct. Because the name of this feud is Shawn Michaels will never beat The Undertaker. Like the Hell in a Cell match, Taker loses because of Kane. The casket match, Taker loses because of Kane. I can't even remember another match that they've had. And it's all just... It just works. They get in the ring, the crowd is fucking electric as soon as the bell rings. They understand, they're invested in these two characters they've known for 15 years at minimum at this point. Longer for both of them, actually, nearly 20. Like 18. But whatever. And like it starts off and they just start off really intense where I think Taker shoots out and Michaels misses. And Michaels' chops are so good. Him and Flair, especially on this. Everybody says Benoit is the best chops, but they're just different to the way people chop nowadays. People chop, like, it's very flashy almost, and, like, the way they chop, like, Michaels and Flair and stuff, it's all, like, short, like, bang chops, and they're really good. I like them a lot. They're different, and I noticed it. But they sort of start, because this is a mirror, because they start with this strike exchange at the beginning, and then at the end they come back to this when, like, they're exhausted and they can barely stand up. They end up resorting back to just this, and it's sort of this full circle thing before they go into the actual finish. There's so much. I referenced the Jericho podcast where he was talking with the ref who reffed this match about the match, because it's kind of an iconic botch in this match where Undertaker nearly dies, but we'll talk about that in a second. But Jericho said, like, it's incredible how much Shawn Michaels waits in certain moments. This relates to this spot exactly. So there's a big spot, it's a famous spot at this point, where Taker goes for a dive, and Michaels is supposed to pull a cameraman in the way, and the cameraman's supposed to catch Undertaker. But it fucks up, and I don't even think it was the cameraman's fault. Taker just jumps wrong and, like, dives on his head. Now, he's jumping out of the ring onto the ground. So it's like a 3-meter fall. It's fucking 2-meter fall. Let's not get too fucking over the top. It's like 10 feet or something. And it's a big fucking fall, and he lands on his head, it looks like, and it looks like he's dead, but he manages to roll, and he's completely fine. But, like, Michaels taking advantage of this spot is, like, incredible. Like, the count out goes for, like, 5 minutes or something, and he's only supposed to be counting to 10. He gets the rev, he sells it, even though he didn't get hit. He rolls in the ring slowly, and he takes his time, and it's captivating the whole time, and Taker getting back into the ring, it feels like an actual struggle that a lot of count outs just usually don't feel, because it's a normal spot in every match they do nowadays. Like, there'll be a count out to the 9, and then the guy gets in the ring at the very end. And it's so formulaic, and it feels like the dude's faking, and he falls down. He gets up at 8, falls back down, hits 9, and then suddenly he does a big dramatic jump into the ring, and nobody ever thinks the match is actually going to end like that, especially if they get so close, or if it does, they're just pissed off because count out finishes are, like, cowardly. But this one really feels like it feels like a real fucking struggle the whole time. That's another thing I was noticing with a lot of these matches that I don't really notice in current, like, wrestling, even generally, even in something like New Japan, where it kind of feels like a struggle. It's not to this point, and it's a lot slower as well, and I really started to appreciate it, where I don't think I would have before I started this rewatch program, whatever. Like, each move has, like, a big effect. Like, I'm pretty sure Taker hits a chokeslam very early in the match, and, like, it feels like Michaels has slowed down through the whole match because he takes that. He hits a tombstone at one point. The crowd is going insane throughout all of this, which is a big point, especially when it's a false finish, the crowd is going insane. Like, Taker hits the first tombstone, not too early, not like the second match, but, like, I remember, like, because the moonsault one is the finish, and that's pretty fucking awesome. But the one where he pulls him over the ropes, where Michaels is trying to skin the cat, which is a normal Michaels spot, but then he pulls him back in, and he hits it. Like, the crowd goes insane for that, because they legitimately think it might be the finish, because at this point, people didn't really kick out of the tombstone. Michaels sort of starts this trend, and then in every, I think every fucking streak match after this that I watched, somebody kicks out of the tombstone. But then there's a hope spot, because the thing is, everybody thinks Taker is going to win this match. They're pretty sure. So everybody's kind of rooting for Michaels, though Taker has the respect of being like this god, basically, in wrestling. That he's not getting booed. He's not the heel in this match or anything. But like, everybody's kind of... And Michaels, if anything, is being sort of underhanded, but like, that has always been what got Michaels over as a babyface, was him being like a cheeky fuck. He's the sexy boy, of course. And so he's doing shit like this, and he really makes it feel like a struggle. And then he hits the first super kick, and the crowd goes insane because they buy it. They buy that maybe he could win. And it sort of comes out of nowhere. I think it comes after a botch or something, and like everybody forgets the botch instantly. And then he hits a second and maybe even a third one at some point, and it like escalates to the point where the crowd freaks the fuck out. There's like 70,000 people in Houston this night, I think it is. They're both from Texas. Isn't that cute? Like, they go insane, and then eventually the finish is the tombstone. But like, you can feel like if Michaels had won this fucking match, the crowd would have gone insane. Now, he probably wasn't the right choice to win this match. The Taker streak thing should continue on. But it's just so good. It really is a 5-star match. I think I only gave 3 matches 5 stars in this whole thing. This is legitimately one of the best matches I've ever seen. I don't know if you're a lapsed wrestling fan, going back to watch it might be fun. I don't know. I don't like to recommend matches to people who've never been into wrestling and say, this is the match that'll get you into it. I feel like that's just... Wrestling is a thing you either get or you don't. I would never force somebody to watch a match and see if they like it. But the timing on everything in this match is just real fucking good. I like it a lot. And then the next match that I watched for the re-watch was the sequel match, the year later. Again, now, like, this match gets the big fucking reputation for being the greatest match ever, and Michaels wants to retire the next year, so he'll do a streak versus career match where if he loses, he must retire. If Taker loses, he loses his streak. This is Shawn Michaels' retirement match. He came out of retirement one time for a Saudi show. We all just forget that, though. And sort of the storyline coming into this is stronger, where it's like they didn't main event this WrestleMania, and like every match after it suffered because this was definitely the peak in that Mania card, and the crowd sort of was way quieter for the next 2 matches, which were both World Championship matches. There was a triple threat Edge, Big Show, and Cena, and then Triple H and Orton. Both matches kind of fell flat because that match was so good, and that happens on wrestling cards a lot. So the next year, they are in the main event this time. Batista and Cena semi-main event them for the WWE Championship. Edge and Jericho, I think, is the other championship match. Actually, no, I'm not saying I think. Don't undersell myself. I fucking know this shit, alright? And then at the main event, it's Michaels' retirement match, the streak match. So the build-up to this match is really good. Michaels, screws Taker out of his world championship, because he won't accept his challenge. And Taker's like, all right, I'll accept your challenge if you put your career on the line. It's like an escalating. Like, last year was just the greatest match of all time with stakes about the streak. Now the streak is more of a realized thing because of that last match. So how do we up the ante? Well, Michaels is going to retire if he loses. This is in Atlanta, I think. This WrestleMania is very interesting aesthetically. It's very orange. Gross. It's a very, unique Mania. The set and everything. It's interesting to go back and see. It looks very distinct. I feel like every Mania kind of looks distinct, but this one looks kind of weird. So it's kind of interesting that this is the environment in which this match happens. Even if you think 31 is very white because of that stage, but I have a lot of nostalgia for that one, and I really like that stage. Even 32 has the big black arena, and of course it's the fucking biggest one ever. It's whatever. We'll talk about all of those eventually, probably. The match itself, I think we can get into that now. The match itself is less good, I think, but still big and dramatic. I think the pressure got to them a little. That's a little mean. I still gave it 4 stars. Taker hits a tombstone on the outside in like the first 5 minutes of this match, and then it sort of works because then Michaels has to like work from underneath for everything. Michaels is like very much the babyface in this match. People don't want to see him retire. People are also torn because they don't really want to see the streak end, but like more so they want Michaels to stick around. Again, everybody kind of knew Michaels is going to retire now. He did this same thing for Ric Flair 2 years earlier, where they had a retirement match and everybody understood Ric Flair's probably going to lose this match. This is his last match. So people come into this match like, this is Michaels' last match. Holy shit. And obviously Taker and Michaels understand this and they want to give a big match. So to sort of escalate things, I think they did that tombstone spot on the outside. But it's like 5 minutes in, it feels weird, and then he has to work from underneath the entire match. I don't remember any big moments where the crowd freaks out because they think Michaels might win. I remember a table spot after this that was okay. I don't think this match was as long either. The finish for this match is really good, where it's like Michaels is beating the fuck up and then he like slaps Taker to make him do it, and Taker does the jumping tombstone, and that's sort of the defiant last act of Shawn Michaels in his WWE career, ending of his character. It's really good. That finish is really good. I don't think the atmosphere is as good. I'm pretty sure because these are both stadiums because they're WrestleMania shows. I think this was a closed lid stadium, so the atmosphere was probably better because the crowd is better if it's not an open air stadium. This match was an open air stadium, and it's this Atlanta crowd that I'm not too sold on. I don't think the crowd was as hot either. I don't really have a lot to say about this match. I don't remember everything about this match. I'm kind of interested in watching this one again. And if I ever do that, I'll update the score and we'll talk about it again. But yeah, it's very... I feel like maybe it's because I watched it directly after this. Maybe if I'd waited a year. Also, the aftermath of it is they shake hands and everything. They do the big thing. It feels like they do the shaking hands thing all the time in NXT, and I fucking despise it. I think like the handshake after two rivals have a match in wrestling is fucking disgusting and cringe, and I hate it all the time. This one feels really good. It feels earned. Like these two have hated each other, their character-wise, forever. But this is the end, so let me show the respect or whatever. But then they don't play Michaels' music, and I don't know why this got to me, but like he does the big farewell thing. Everybody in the stadium claps for him. Everybody's sad. Everybody's screaming how much they love him. But it's just kind of this silent walk-off that's kind of lame, I think. I feel like all they had to do is play his theme music as he walks out. Maybe for retirement, he didn't want it. He wanted it to be like the silent walkout because that seems cooler. He gets to the top of the ramp, he bows, and then he leaves. It's real, it's like, it's not as good as the Flair one, but it is effective. But they should have played the music. I don't know. It felt weird at the end. So that's my weird take on Taker Michaels 2. I don't think it's nearly as good. I've seen some people come out with a hot take. It's actually better than the first one. I don't know. I don't know about that match. But then we come back to the surprise of this fucking list, and maybe my favorite match on this entire list, and my favorite Undertaker WrestleMania match. Undertaker vs. CM Punk WrestleMania 29. Now, this was the first WrestleMania I ever watched live, and I remember I didn't think that much about this match. I thought the Lesnar Triple H match was the best match on this card when I was, 12 watching this show. Going back now, I feel like this fucking match is fucking incredible. Insane finishing 10 minutes. Everything plays into the story about Punk being a cunt and losing because of it. Then the storytelling in this match I really like. CM Punk, it was the evilest evil boy in the build up to this match. He's Paul Bearer died. Around the time this Mania match was happening, he used to be Undertaker's manager. He's father in kayfabe. In the storyline, and CM Punk's just got his urn because he used to carry around an urn. He's dumping his ashes on the ground and spitting on him and shit, basically making fun of this dead man to the Undertaker, and the Undertaker's getting real mad about it, but he can never get his hands on CM Punk. And that's sort of the build up to the match, and then throughout the match the urn is in it and everything like that. Basically CM Punk is continuing to be a prick. Just the evilest boy in the Undertaker's finally going to get his hands on it. And at the beginning of the match, that sort of plays into it because I think Punk evades him and then gets the upper hand because Undertaker's too mad and he's got to calm himself to win. Taker wins this match. Ironically, out of these two, you would suspect that it might have been the Undertaker's last WrestleMania match. This is CM Punk's last WrestleMania match. And his only Mania match when he's on top of the world in terms of how good I think he is. I haven't rewatched the Jericho match the year before yet. That's also when he was champion and he was sort of more on top of the world. These are both semi-main events. CM Punk might be the greatest of all time. We'll get into it. I watched more CM Punk matches after this, particularly this Jericho match, but I really like CM Punk here. The insane thing of this match is that this New York, well, technically New Jersey or whatever the fuck, there's a big dilemma in whether or not this WrestleMania happens in New York or New Jersey. This fucking crowd of smarks is cheering CM Punk in a streak match, and they want Taker to lose. Not even like Shawn Michaels could do this the years before, but now we're 2013, alright? The internet wrestling community is a real thing, and especially in New York, there are smarks everywhere. There are chants for CM Punk throughout this match. He is more over than The Undertaker. He might be the most over person on this night, even more than Rock and Cena, because people are booing Cena. I watch the entrances for that, and The Rock, it's just sort of accepted that he's going to lose. This Mania was sort of the most predictable Mania because it had 3 big main event matches, and they were all very predictable. And the match order spoiled them because if Taker was going to lose, he would have been in the main event, and if Triple H was going to lose and retire, it would have been in the main event. But the main event was Cena versus Rock 2, which everybody knew Cena was going to win. So it's kind of like the night of disappointments this Mania has become known as. But this fucking match is incredible. It's like willing against the inevitable of Punk's gonna lose, but this New York crowd is not gonna fucking take it. They do when he wins because they still like The Undertaker. Everybody likes The Undertaker. Again, he's like a god to wrestling fans. But fucking, I couldn't believe it that in a streak match at Mania, somebody besides The Undertaker, past 2000 and fucking anything, that he was getting out-cheered by Punk, who's been... It's this disconnect of the storyline. CM Punk is supposed to be the ultimate bad guy, but fucking these fans don't give a fuck about the storyline. They're here to watch fucking their boy CM Punk, who got fucked over, losing his belt beforehand to The Rock, and all this sort of narrative that was going on the internet before. And Punk is a star in this match because he gets sung into the ring. He has the Cult of Personality entrance thing. Living Colour is literally there singing the song. I hate how this is mic'd because you can only hear them singing. You can't hear the crowd. And I would have loved to see them. You can hear them because how it's mic'd is it must be mic'd to just get them. But the mics where they are pick up when Punk first walks out with Heyman in the urn, and the fucking crowd. That's the one part where you hear the crowd. They're so fucking loud for this idiot as they see him. That fucking... you can even hear it. And then after it cuts and they obviously switch back to the normal mics and the crowd is fucking going insane, chanting CM Punk after his entrance theme is over, and him just being an insane person. If you've seen the famous Colt Cabana podcast where Punk's talking about this match, he talks about how he tried to kill himself in this match because he was trying to get injured because he wanted time off. He got time off after this match anyway, but he says he was wrestling like a madman this night, and it shows. And he's just going fucking insane. You'd think the straight edge boy was on something tonight, because he marches to the ring and he always does the thing where he gets up on the ropes and he does the pose, and especially in Money in the Bank 2011, his famous entrance, he would put his arms up and get the crowd to fucking go insane, and he did this a bunch more, and he's way more animated than he usually is. He's sort of playing into this over-the-top heel character, but everybody's fucking loving him, and he's playing into that as well, and he's fucking going insane, and then he gets off, and then the typical thing for an Undertaker entrance for an opponent, especially at WrestleMania, is the camera, the first person will come out first who's versing Taker, the music will cut for their music, then the camera, then we'll have 20 seconds in between of supposed to be silence anticipating the Undertaker coming back, and the camera will close up on CM Punk or usually Shawn Michaels or wherever he's versing at Mania, and they're supposed to be super serious. The Undertaker is coming, the big spooky entrance is coming, better get serious. And Punk starts doing that, and then as the gong hits and everything goes black, the last image you see is Punk just open mouth laughing, and not at Undertaker, but fuck yeah, I'm excited for the Taker match, and he's clapping. It's fucking it's just the energy this boy is giving off is fucking insane. It's everything about this match is great. Now the first part of the match isn't the very first bit is really good. Then there's 5 minutes where it's this is okay. It's a good WrestleMania match. They're sort of slowing it down. There is a spot early on where Punk goes for old school, and the best thing about this mix of we're starting to get into the Smark era, especially the major Smark era at this point. The Daniel Bryan stuff happens later that year, but the mix of like hardcore casuals and hardcore smarks, where now it's sort of just hardcore smarks. Well, now it's really just the hardcore smarks. But like when you get into like 2012 or even 2011, it's kind of like hardcore smarks, casuals, but it's like hardcore casuals and hardcore smarks in this New York fucking area because it's like WWE's biggest market. And just like they know every move and like every setup to every move, so they pop, the crowd pops every time any indication of a big move is happening. So when Punk goes up for old school, as soon as he twists the arm, the crowd starts reacting, then he goes to step up, and like the smarky like haha we love CM Punk people are like laughing their faces off that Punk is going to do the disrespectful move. And so like these mixtures of pops that culminate in this big audience reaction to him going up for this move is fucking sick. It's so fucking good. I love it. And then Taker goes for old school at some point. I'm pretty sure he Punk pulls him off and all this stuff. It really feels like for a little while that like CM Punk is making fun of the Undertaker at this point, just sort of like slapping him around and stuff like that. And then the last 10 minutes is just incredible because shit starts happening. I think they have a table spot here where Punk tries to do the elbow, but it doesn't break the table. I think that happens. That's like the one big botch. It still kind of looks effective and cool. He also hits his leg, which I'm surprised he didn't hurt. But Heyman is also having the time of his life outside, acting over the top and shit like that. Everything sort of adds to this. I felt like commentary did a pretty good job. It would have been JBL, King, and Cole at this point. JR's gone. Well, not gone, but he's not commentating anymore on a regular basis and not for this Mania card. But I feel like they did a pretty good job. JBL was kind of undercutting CM Punk when he's supposed to be advocating for him and things like that. But yeah, commentary was just a sort of side point. But after the table spot, I think is when we get into this insane finishing 10 minutes where I think Punk hits a GTS, and because the crowd is kind of on CM Punk's side, they go insane thinking that he's going to get the win. He goes to like, they do a bunch of submissions where Taker gets the Hell's Gate and he gets the Anaconda Vice, which goes back and forth. Punk does the elbow and shit like that. And the first tombstone, this is, again, a reoccurring thing now. Punk kicks out of a tombstone and the crowd goes fucking insane, which kind of doesn't really fit the story of Punk being like this cunt that can't win shit, because he sort of is kicking out of the fucking tombstone at this point, but that's just sort of part and parcel. Punk is positioned too high on the card. Out of, like, the 6 main eventers, it's only him and John Cena that are full-time fucking competitors. The rest is Taker, Lesnar, Rock, and fucking Triple H. They're not exactly carrying the company, so he can't just bury Punk, even though he will lose here. So he can't just go down to one tombstone. But yeah, so the crowd and like what the match actually is kind of conflicts with the story, but the story still kind of pulls through, and it still somehow all works together. And then the final spot is a second tombstone, and there's a big pop for Taker when he wins. I just think like this match is fucking incredible. There's a spot with the urn in the last ride where Punk hits Taker with the urn, and that's another really good false finish. A lot of cool stuff. There's a choke slam at one point that I remember being really, really cool. I really love this match. If you're, especially for the wrestling fans listening, and because this match isn't talked about nearly as much as a lot of the other Taker streak matches, go back and fucking check this one out. I think we're done there. Then I was on a CM Punk kick. I was like, all right, more CM Punk matches. And I thought about watching his match with Jericho the year before, but for whatever reason, I didn't feel like watching that one. And then I remember the next match he has is at Payback 2013 in Chicago, in the same arena the Money in the Bank happened 2 years ago. I thought it was the Money in the Bank 2013 pay-per-view. Turns out it's Payback. And so this is a comeback match after the Taker match. He has time off, and he's obviously a babyface coming into this match. Jericho's been building up. I want CM Punk. Heyman wears CM Punk. He'll be at fucking Payback in Chicago. And my fucking God, is CM Punk not the biggest babyface I've ever seen to these fucking people in Chicago? I'll just start with this. The crowd like reacts verbally. They all like squeal because there's a part in the match where there's a spot where Punk like throws Jericho over the top rope or something and poses, but Jericho, instead of taking the bump on the outside, recoups himself and then goes up to the top rope to hit a drop kick, to hit a missile drop kick. And like Punk, like, not understanding that he's done this in the storyline, and the crowd recognizing this because obviously they can see it. They're, like, screeching to try and tell CM Punk that fucking Jericho has flipped over the rope and is actually going to hit the missile dropkick is fucking incredible. Nothing this genuine can happen in modern wrestling. But in 2013, it was still alive with Chicago and CM Punk. It's just like the cutest, fucking most wholesome babyface move I've ever seen. And it's fucking incredible. Finishing stretch is really good. Crowd was on fire. The crowd really makes this match. At first, the entrance is real good. The anticipation, waiting for CM Punk to return to see if he, like, what's he going to look like? Is he coming back? Holy fuck, is really good. So the entrance and, like, the crowd sort of make this match. I think I originally gave this 3 stars and then I bumped it up to 4 stars because I really like that spot. The finishing stretch is also really good. Punk wrestling is kind of weird. It's not really the type of wrestling you see anymore. He gets the shit kicked out of him a lot. He's very much an empathetic babyface, kind of like Shawn Michaels in that regard. Where nowadays, babyfaces are too cool to, like, get the shit kicked out of him, and it's a weird disconnect. It's sort of like a type of wrestling. It's like a blend of the modern wrestling of, like, 1,000,000 miles per hour and, like, older school wrestling of very slow and methodical. Punk is almost like the perfect balance of this. He's not the most athletic person in the world. He's not doing flips and shit like, I don't know, fucking Ricochet or Ospreay or something like that. But this match is really fucking sick. From just like a crowd and pop perspective, it's not going to change your life or anything. But from a return perspective, this is Punk's last return. I think maybe his last big match in Chicago ever. It's fucking sick. It's real good. I don't really have much more to say about this match. It felt like it went on for a while, and there was a part where I actively thought this match was bad or just kind of uneventful, like a 2.5 star match. The finishing stretch really saves it. It's not trying to be the greatest match of all time, but it's very effective in what it does, I will say. Then we got back on our Undertaker kick. We did Taker versus Flair at Mania 18. I've seen this match before. WrestleMania 18 might be the most recent WrestleMania that I haven't watched the entire card for. Though I don't know if I've actually ever watched 22 the entire way through, or 23, so that might not be true. Let's just go through this. 19 I've watched all the way through a bunch. 20 I've watched all the way through a bunch. 21 I've watched all the way through a bunch. 22 and 23 I'm not sure about. 24 I've watched all the way through a bunch. 25 I watched all the way through, I think. 26 I have. 27 I have. 28 I think I did one time. I remember doing it because it was after the network came out, so it was like kind of recently. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37. I think 37 was last year. Is that this year's? I've all watched live. So, but yeah. So I'm not too familiar with this event. I know I have seen this match before, and I'd seen The Rock vs. Hogan, which is the next one we're gonna rewatch. This match is fucking sick. I almost gave it 5 stars just as a statement. It's more of a 4-star match. The build up to this match was just Taker is in his not Undertaker phase at this point, but his Big Red, Booger Red, I think fucking JR was calling him at this time. He's just beating the shit. He wants to beat up Ric Flair. Ric Flair's like in storyline the half owner of WWE at this point. So he's got like a boardroom skit thing going on. In the build up package, the boardroom stuff is like, the WWE is fucking hokey, isn't it? Sort of like the fake like boardroom drama that's going on with Ric Flair and Vince McMahon. But yeah, whatever. That's just part of the build-up. And he beats the shit out of David Flair and shit like that. It's funny, whenever they implicate Ric Flair's children and it's not Charlotte, it's just like, But David Flair was trained to be in OVW, I believe, at the time. But all of that, it's just like Taker is the big monster heel, and he really feels like it. And Flair is like the sympathetic, aging legend. Like, I think he's nearly 50 when this match takes place. I think he might be like 49 when this match takes place in 2002. He's at the end of his career. Again, he's not wrestling full time. He's sort of doing a on-screen role as more of a, what do you call it, GM? That's not what they called it back then, but whatever. And Taker is a lot younger than Flair is, but he's a legend already at this point. And and it is technically a streak match. But just coming into this, they start off just beating the shit out of each other, like punches and chops from Flair and punches from Taker. It's like this is a blood feud. Also, the entrances are both fucking sick. This crowd in Toronto on WrestleMania 18 is on fire. It's one of the best crowds of all time. We'll talk about the Rock and Hogan match next, but they're on it for Flair. Can you think about these two matches happened on the same card? The Rock and Hogan and Taker and Flair. These like two dream matches. This one's sort of understated because it is a mid-carder match. Kind of, it's one of the main events. It's probably the third biggest match on the card, but it is positioned like the fourth match on the card. So it's kind of fucking insane. And they just have a cool fucking beat the shit out of each other. I think it's no disqualification. I think they're using pipes and chairs. I think actually it's not, and they just use that shit. But the entrances is what I was talking about. Flair having before they fully remixed his theme for his like run in WWE after this point, like the earlier Flair trumpets at a WrestleMania and the entire fucking arena wooing. It's really fucking sick. And Taker's Limp Bizkit entrance with the bike will never not be awesome. Fuck what anybody says going around the ring. He looks like a fucking killer at this time, and everybody buys it. Everybody buys both this match. Again, these are two characters they're fully invested in at this point. They know a lot about. Like, the crowd doesn't need to be told to be involved in this match. This is Ric Flair versus the fucking Undertaker. Then Flair starts chopping, and the crowd fucking explodes. That's true. They do punches, and they particularly don't chop. Flair doesn't chop Taker until like they get back in the ring after brawling outside, and then he starts with the chops, and the crowd like gets really into the chops because everybody wants to woo along with the chops. And it's really fucking cool. The arm spot is incredible. The arm spot is incredible as the finish where Taker goes for the last ride, but instead goes for the tombstone. All fucking great spots. So he also beat the shit out of Arn Anderson, I think, in the build-up to this match. And there is a spot where Arn pops up and gives him the spine buster. The crowd goes fucking mental. It's really sick. Arn Anderson, the best spine buster boy, doing it at WrestleMania. It's really fucking sick. Taker then beats the shit out of him on the outside and then beats the shit out of Flair. Taker is put over really big in this match. He like clearly beats the shit out of Flair. But that's sort of part of the story, Flair fighting from underneath and not giving up. It's kind of like when Joseph Montesilio talks about like what fighting spirit means in Japanese wrestling, and sort of like it's like fighting to the bitter end even though your loss is inevitable. Even if the audience thinks your loss is inevitable, they will get invested in hope spots and like you fighting from underneath regardless of that fact, because you're gonna make it as difficult as possible for the other prick. Flair kind of demonstrates that in this match of the fighting spirit nature of wrestling. And sort of like, he's probably going to lose. He's the aging legend at this point, and Taker's a top star still, so obviously Taker should go over. And he's like clearly beating the shit out of like Flair and all his friends and family, and he can. But Flair like going down with like, and it's respectful in all that sort of way. Nobody like loses respect for Flair because of this match. JR is on fire in this fucking match. Him and King are doing a great job. He's talking about Undertaker being a son of a bitch, and he's going off on how mean Undertaker is, and Ric Flair's a legend. He's got a family. He's an aging man. He's a fucking business executive. He's not a wrestler anymore. Going through all the list of that. And it's funny because the way JR does this, like modern commentators try to do this and they try to like moralize wrestling situations, but because the current wrestling product feels so fake, it's like we don't buy that Byron Saxton is outraged that Kofi Kingston got beat up by fucking Sheamus or some shit. Nobody gives a fuck. But here it like feels real because it feels like Taker's beating the shit out of Ric Flair, and obviously the age, height difference and everything is evident. And like the way JR even does it, he feels like he believes it and it's not performative, and but it is performative. It's going above and beyond. It's just sort of this, it might be his like southern voice to it plays into it. The way he like puts it over is like, and he never like moralizes at the Undertaker. He sort of puts the Undertaker over like he's the biggest, baddest boy. He doesn't have to fucking do this, but he is, just because he's mean. And he usually comes back to this mean thing. He's like, he's a mean son of a bitch, not like he's a bad person or whatever. We're in the fucking wrestling business here. And he sort of always gives respect where it's due. There's something about, you can't pinpoint how great JR is at this time. It's fucking incredible. But yeah, the crowd here is awesome the whole way through. This spot at the end where Taker would do this as he was being in the biker. He would slowly reference the fact, like, he would still call himself the Dead Man or whatever, but he wasn't doing any spooky shit in this time period from 2000 to the beginning of 2004. Because he was the biker Taker at the time. But like the teasers, especially at big matches, especially at WrestleMania, where he goes for the last ride. I think he'd already hit the last ride once on Flair, or at least a chokeslam. And like he couldn't finish him, and he's clearly winning at this point, and he's got to do the finishing move, and he goes to pose to do the last ride. I don't think he'd actually hit it yet, which kind of makes the spot better. And the crowd like pops because it's the Undertaker's finishing move, and then he like shakes his head, and then he picks Flair up, and they realize it's a tombstone, and the crowd fucking explodes. He's doing the reference thing. I understand what that means. The red letter media thing, unironically, and it's fucking based. It's so fucking sick. Just like the reference, and eventually 2 years later, WrestleMania Taker would bring back the famous Undertaker character, and it's just like a reference that while he was Biker Taker, that fucking spirit shit was still in there, and it's kind of just a cute fucking wrestling moment. It's sick as fuck. Let's go on. The next match I watched was later that same night. One of the most famous matches of all time, The Rock versus Hulk Hogan from WrestleMania 18 as well. This was in Toronto, by the way. I didn't know if I mentioned that. Toronto Skydome. And they fucking go mental for this American hero in a second. The build-up to this match is the NWO thing. Hogan turns babyface after the match, which they sort of anticipated, but nobody anticipated this. The Rock has been on top of the world recently. 2002, especially, like Austin's era, it was until he sort of got injured, and then he comes back in 2000 and he is hot, but then he turns heel, and The Rock is at like his peak in 2000. And then he sort of acts as the top babyface while Austin is doing this embarrassing heel run as like the alliance dude, and the invasion shit is going on. And sort of especially coming out of 2002, The Rock is kind of more over than Austin, just because Austin is starting to become a babyface again. And he's doing the what shit, and it's going to go. And then Austin starts to go back up to the top, but then he fucking leaves, and then he retires when he comes back because he's all fucked up. So it's kind of this weird tell of like, The Rock is fucking on top of the world, one of the biggest wrestling stars of all time. This is when WWE is on top of the world. They're kind of coming out of it at this point. But like, The Rock is a lasting star of the Attitude Era. The WWE put WCW with Hulk Hogan out of business, with The Rock and Austin on top. They like beat Hulk Hogan. They beat all of the NWO and everybody in WCW. So you'd think like The Rock and Austin, they're the new stars. Everybody loves him. And then in this one night, some nostalgic wave takes over Toronto. And fucking all of a sudden, The Rock is this new prick that we hate. And Hulk Hogan is the biggest star of all time in the wrestling industry. And everybody loves him. This is perhaps, as I write down here, the hottest stadium crowd I've ever heard. These fucking idiots, 60,000 in the not in the Tokyo Dome, in the Sky Dome in Toronto. And they would have killed every man on the planet for Hulk Hogan that night. And that's the appeal of this match to a lot of people. That's why a lot of people say this is one of the best matches of all time. Why it's a 5-star match and stuff like that. It's this nostalgic babyface Hulk Hogan is like Star Wars to the same generation. The thing is, I kind of think Hulk Hogan sucks. And don't really understand. Like with Flair, I get it a lot. I love Flair. I love his interviews. I love all that shit. I love the in-ring stuff. Hogan, I don't really get it, and I don't think I can, because when I was born, Hulk Hogan was fucking 50. But like, it really is fucking Star Wars to these people. They just throw The Rock aside, and this, like, The Rock, like, I understand The Rock, this match happens a year after I was born, right? The Rock isn't part of my generation either, but I love The Rock. He's fucking incredible, right? 2003 heel Rock is the greatest wrestling stuff of all time. So I get it, but like, Hogan is like too far. I can't get invested in how corny and weird and dumb the Hogan stuff is. But like, 60,000 people in the fucking middle of the Attitude Era, they will come alive for Hogan and his nostalgic eat your vitamins, whatever the fuck. And that's probably why this match isn't a 5-star for me, but I have to like begrudgingly give it 4 stars because I understand. Like, you have to watch it and just hear this fucking crowd go insane for this person. And as somebody who's into wrestling just for the crowd, like, I can't help but love it. I like the person it's for is kind of weird to me. And he does the Hulk up spots. He does all the traditional like pointing, whatever the fuck. And these Toronto idiots, they're going fucking insane for it. it kind of works out because I don't think the WWE anticipated this when they booked the match. I feel like they probably felt The Rock was going to be the biggest star too. But, like, they factored it in because Hogan turns babyface at the end. At the end of the match, they beat up the NWO together and leave. I think this match is only 13 minutes, but the segment is like 30 minutes. Because they have the aftermath where they pose together. The Rock does start to get booed at this point, and it sort of happens continuously. There's sort of like a pull against The Rock as well in sort of the 2002. And this is even before he starts filming movies, so it's not even necessarily that. The Rock was kind of... He also was more heel and face than Austin ever was. Like, the crowd never really turned against Austin at any time. With The Rock, they did. This match is very interesting. This is obviously a must-watch if you've somehow never seen it and you're a wrestling fan of some sort. The first part of the match cements Hogan being the crowd favorite as he just beats the shit out of The Rock, and the roars start coming from the crowd. The roars are fucking... I'm not kidding. This is the hottest crowd I've ever heard in my fucking life. They're insane for this idiot. Like, it's supposed to be an opening, like, heel stretch for Hogan where he starts beating up The Rock, and, like, the crowd is going insane. For Hogan. The entrance is really cool. It's got the fucking the NWO theme, and he's coming out, and it's got the effect and the black and white stuff, and the crowd's going insane. Again, it's all really cool. It's a good match. It's a lot of fun. Even if I don't get the Hogan stuff, I think I overblew how much I don't really care about Hogan and how that may affect the match. It's just it's fun. Of course, I gave it 4 stars. But I don't know if I have anything else to say about it. There's a lot of interesting other stuff coming in and coming out of that match. I don't know. It's weird. The fucking Hulk Hogan is a weird. So let's move on. Another 5-star match. Actually, I think I gave out 4 5-stars. Michaels Taker 1, Taker Punk, and then here. We got one more after this. Here is Michaels versus Flair. The crowd wasn't as hot as they should have been early, but they made up for it by the end. Just awesome. This is probably the greatest wrestling spot of all time. The "I'm sorry, I love you" super kick. Ric Flair has to retire. This is a retirement match. This is one of the best angles I think the WWE has ever done, where late 2007, early 2008, Ric Flair comes out and does a promo about he loves the industry, he's never going to retire. Then Vince McMahon comes out and says, fuck you, the next time you lose, you must retire. And Flair would have these big matches on a pay-per-view or on Raw where it would be a retirement match, and if he lost, he had to retire. And they threw a bunch of undercard heels at him, like Mr. Kennedy and MVP. And basically it was if Ric Flair loses, he retires. And these are obviously being fed to Flair so he can go on a winning streak before we hit WrestleMania, the biggest event of the year. And he's paired with Michaels. I think Vince makes the match between Flair and Michaels doesn't want to do it because he thinks he'll beat Flair easy. And then Flair coaxes him out of it, and Michaels does a thing. And they're sort of adversarial coming into the match, but they love each other. And then it all boils over in the match where they're getting pissy at each other, slapping each other and getting mad. And then at the end, Flair slowly loses throughout the match. Michaels does a famous, he's setting up for the Sweet Chin Music, the super kick, and he mouths, "I'm sorry, I love you," kick. And then 1, 2, 3. And then he pops right back up. He grabs Flair's face and kisses him on the side and leaves immediately and leaves Flair in the ring to do the whole thing. This is another match that didn't main event WrestleMania that definitely should have. Charlotte is in this part. It's weird seeing her as just Flair's family. There's 6 daughters and Charlotte's one of them when she's going to become a mega star later. This match is fucking so good. Everybody knows Flair is going to lose. They all know this is his final night. He does the cool spot that they've now recreated with Charlotte a bunch at WrestleMania, where he has the massive robe. They do a long shot with Flair in the middle and the stadium background in the background. And as he slowly lifts up the robe, so on the side where he lifts up his arms, I'm doing it in the car as if you can see it. The fireworks go up in the background, and it's sort of him posing, holding the robe out with his arms extended, looking fucking Ric Flair. And the fireworks in the background. It's real fucking sick. Again, at the beginning and for the entrance, the crowd don't pop like a modern crowd, so it kind of left me disappointed. They are very invested in the match, though. And slowly in the match, they go more and more It's the opposite for Shawn Michaels here from the Undertaker matches. He's the Undertaker in this match. Everybody knows he's going to win, and it's sort of fighting against the inevitable again. And it's so good how they do this throughout the match. Like, Flair is, like, fucking with him at the beginning, showing that he's still, like, the greatest of all time. Then they get down and they do a bunch of submissions. There's, like, a figure four spot where, like, everybody comes alive because they think maybe Flair will win and Michaels will lose. And they're, like, begging for it. There's, like, this awesome, like, moonsault into the announcer table spot where Flair moves and Michaels hits, like, his stomach, and it looks like he's broken every fucking bone in every rib probably he has, but he seems to be fine. Just everything about this match, every second is fucking incredible. I think it's only, like, 20 minutes. The finish is incredible, but, like, getting to that point, like, he hits, because that's his second super kick. When he hits the first one and Flair kicks out, the crowd going insane, him slowly getting up and, like, begging for it, telling him to do it. There's a part, because the I'm Sorry I Love You happens. I was going to mention JR is again on fire here. It's JR and King again. They're both incredible in this match, talking about, because obviously they both have histories with wrestling, and they're from Ric Flair's generation, so they have, like, they're going down and talking about Ric Flair did this and Ric Flair did that, and Ric Flair ain't going to die here, and all this stuff, and how good Shawn Michaels is and how good Ric Flair is. And it's just all good. The point I was going to make with commentary, after the fact, and you could hate this, but I think they pull it off really well, because Michael says, "I'm sorry, I love you," and he mouths it, and you might miss it, and then after the fact, when they're doing the replays, they show it again, and I remember, because I can hear it in my head, King goes, like, "Watch this part," and then he says it. He says it over Michaels. He says, "I'm sorry, I love you," and then the kick happens, and then King says, "Wow." And it's just like, oh, it's all incredible. It's fucking... This is one of the best matches of all time, too. It's real good. I really love this match. They lit the fucking Orlando dome. I don't think it's a dome. The stadium in Orlando there. They lit it the fuck up. It was definitely the best match on that card. Though I haven't rewatched any of those matches yet. Probably should have been the main event. It's fucking... Again, it's Ric Flair's last WWE match, his retirement match, except for those 2 times he wrestled in TNA or whatever. We don't talk about those. But again, real fucking good. 5 stars. The struggle, the emotion, again, the crowd understanding that this is Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. Like, you don't have to get anything over. They know every move. They know the setup to every move. He goes to the top rope and it nearly works because it never usually works. No, it does work. The payoff to Ric Flair's entire career in this match, where he always goes up top and it's like a comedy spot. Ric Flair has 2 comedy spots, where, like, he'll go to the top rope and he'll go for the, he'll go for something because he never hits it, and the dude will go up and throw him down off the top rope, because it's sort of like a gag where every time Ric Flair goes to the top rope, somebody grabs him and throws him to the ground. In this match, in his last match, he finally hits a crossbody. 56-year-old Ric Flair hits a fucking crossbody in a fucking wrestling match on Shawn Michaels. It's incredible. And he also has the flop spot. I think he just does the flop in the match. Can't really pay that off, but him hitting the fucking he hits not a sidewalk slam, a fucking going in the side, jumping off the top rope. You know the move. I'm pretty sure I just said the name. It's fucking... This match is incredible. I really like it. But I guess we'll move on. Then I jumped the fuck around. I was back to CM Punk. Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk, Summerslam 2013. Now, this is before the match we opened with John Cena. So Lesnar is still, like, kind of in this middle ground of he's come back to be the fighter boy, but he's also trying to work matches like he did 10 years ago. And it's kind of working. I gave this match 4 stars. I really like it. Crowd gets into it. It's pretty good, not amazing. I originally had this at like 3.25 stars or something, I think. So this not amazing thing, I would say it is pretty amazing the more I think about this match. The weird thing is, like, it's kind of structured so that Punk can't. Like, Brock kind of beats the shit out of Punk, but then CM Punk just beats the shit out of Brock Lesnar and has him beat like 4 times, but Paul Heyman interferes a bunch. The story going into this match, people pointed out it's kind of weak because it's more of a Paul Heyman versus CM Punk feud with Brock Lesnar as Heyman's, like, agent. And that kind of is the thing, but we got a CM Punk Brock Lesnar match that's kind of cool. But yeah, the crowd, again, is another inevitable spot where people kind of know Lesnar's going to win. Though it's not as guaranteed as, like, the matches I talked about just then. So they're kind of rooting for Punk from underneath. Punk in 2013, he's talked about this himself. Fucking did the job for every part-timer. He did the job for The Rock twice, for Undertaker. He comes back and beats Chris Jericho. Whoop-de-fucking-do. And then he loses to fucking Lesnar. It's just like, he had a reason to be mad, alright? He's doing the job for all of these idiots, losing constantly. But again, the crowd, I think it's in Los Angeles for SummerSlam, they are fucking on CM Punk's side. They're doing really good. I feel like the Heyman spots, like, it's kind of stupid whenever there's a babyface wrestler and, like, there's a manager on the outside for the heel, and, like, the manager will do something, and the wrestler, like an idiot, will run outside to attack the manager, and while they're not looking, the other wrestler jumps up and hits him from behind. They do this spot in this match, but it works pretty well. Like, you really want CM Punk to, like, beat the shit out of Heyman's storyline. And he kind of does. I feel like he did that, and I was like, alright, this is kind of the cathartic moment. And then Brock wins anyway with an F5, and I feel like they have a spot for Punk after the match where everybody claps for him again, because they respect that he lost. But, like, and Brock's really good at selling. This is something that's pretty evident. Everybody points this out. And he's selling all the time for Punk. And then he'll just do a weirdly, like, Brock Lesnar only could do athletic spot periodically. I don't remember too much of this match. I remember, like, what's going on everywhere. I remember him chasing... I remember there was a really good GTS spot, and, like, everybody thought Punk was going to win. And I think he, like, pulled... this was a really cool spot. Lesnar gets Punk up for the F5, but Punk grabs, like, Heyman's tie and then pulls him into the ring, and it forces him to get him down. Punk with the kicks is really good. I don't think I mentioned this in the Undertaker match, but the overhead kicks, he hit him on Lesnar a bunch, and Lesnar sold him like it was death. And it was, like, really sick. Especially when Lesnar doesn't sell for, like that for anybody anymore. It's really fucking cool. Pretty good, not amazing, I have here. I don't know about all that. Seems pretty fucking sweet to me, I must say. So I really like that match. We'll move on here. Michaels versus Jericho, WrestleMania 19. I also gave this 4 stars. Believe it or not, at one point I thought this was the best match of all time when I was like 12. I don't know. I wasn't too elated with this match. A little slow to begin with, and the crowd isn't as into the entrances or the beginning of the match as much as I'd like. But they get into it by the end. Finishing stretch is really strong, but it's the best roll-up finish I've ever seen. Crowd goes wild. This is true. The roll-up finish at the end from Michaels is really good. Like, roll-ups don't really win matches anymore. I feel like this might be the last time, like, a big match was won with a roll-up. The roll-up spot never works anymore. I wish it would at some point, without it being like a cheating, like, foot on the rope spot. This match is Jericho and Michaels trying to out-wrestle each other. It's cool in spots. There's nothing like blow away. I really like WrestleMania 19's aesthetic of the baseball stadium, the curved ramp and all that stuff. Michaels, I remember his entrance, he has, like, these t-shirt gun things that he's shooting into the crowd, and, like, 3 of them don't work. And Michaels being, like, the fucking ultimate showman, he, like, really builds up the last one to see if it's gonna work, and it's like, that could have fucked up really bad. Like, that might not have worked, and then the last one works after the previous 3 didn't work, and it's just like, oh, what a fucking... Shawn Michaels is a fucking god at this fucking performing shit. A bunch of spots. JR, this is one of his best performances ever this night. Not necessarily this match. We'll get to the next one in a second. He's really good here, and King, they're the Raw commentators. It feels very much like a mid-card 4-star WrestleMania match, and I feel it's really good at this. The WrestleMania 19, like, the last 5 matches are really cool, because it's this match, then Booker T and Triple H, who would... That feels very controversial, but 2 big stars. Then Vince versus Hogan, then Rock versus Austin, then Lesnar versus Angle. It's like, the last 10 dudes on this card are some fucking mega stars. And, like, Undertaker's on the undercard, and, like, Rey Mysterio's on the undercard with Matt Hardy and all that stuff. Big Show. Like, there's some fucking stars. Benoit and Eddie Guerrero are both in the tag match. It's just like, this is a pretty fucking stacked card. I honestly don't know if I remember or can say anything about this. I remember thinking, like, the shots of, like, the baseball stadium in the background were really cool. I remember there's, like, a top rope spot at some point that I thought was impressive. Jericho going, like, he sort of shows up Michaels a bunch, but then he's sort of the arrogant heel, and then Michaels is, like, the veteran underneath who always pulls out. Michaels does win this match, which is kind of you wouldn't see coming necessarily. Jericho gets his heat back after the match real quick. He low blows him after they do the fake hug spot. That was really cool. I like that. Jericho has the beard at this point, right? But Jericho goes for the sweet chin music at some point. He does a little dance beforehand. I remember that being really cool. I don't remember too much from this match, I must say. But I gave it 4 stars. I generally have a good impression of it when I think of it. That's all I think I have to say about this match. Now, this next one, I also at some point considered my favorite match of all time. But this is mostly because of the WrestleMania documentary that happened for WrestleMania 19 that I could talk about all day. It's called like the Mania in WrestleMania or the Mania after WrestleMania. I was going to watch it one night, but it was 4 a.m. and I didn't want to like excite myself when I was going to try and go to sleep. I might do that after this. Go back and watch it. I think like 3 of the 4 parts from YouTube. I think I have it on a disc somewhere on a DVD, but maybe I lost that disc at some point. I should go and check once I get inside too. There's this documentary about WrestleMania 19 that's on the WrestleMania 20 DVD. It's fucking narrated by Jesse Ventura, the greatest voice in the history of humanity, talking about how Austin thought he had a heart attack the night before this match, and this is Austin's last match of all time. That's some pretty big context for this match. And only him, JR, and Vince knew, so not everybody else knows that this is Austin's last match. The people in the stadium don't know. Everybody backstage doesn't know. Austin talks about in the documentary like the pressure of having the one good last match and not anybody knowing. There's the whole talk about how after the match, The Rock tells Austin he loves him, and he says it back, and there's a big part in the documentary. It's really cool. This fucking documentary seared into my brain. When I first saw it when I was like 7, and it was the first time anything had broken kayfabe before, and in the wrestling world, you'd think it would break for a kid who figured out that, but it like just opened it up so much more, and I was never been more fascinated with anything in my life. The line is like they interview The Rock, and The Rock says, "Oh yeah, I said something to him after the match," and the documentary crew asks him if he can tell them what he said, and The Rock's like, "No, I'm not telling you." And there's a spot where he says he told the referee to piss off a bunch because he just wanted to say it to Austin in the middle of the ring. Now going into this is peak heel Rock. He's like being a fucking prick all the time. He's like an underhanded babyface, and Rock and Austin are supposed to come into this match hating each other, though they've had 2 other matches at WrestleMania. The Rock lost both of them. The last thing The Rock has to do in his career is beat Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania, and this is the night he actually does it. So like the ending of this feud is kind of sad. Like the chicken shit annoying bad guy wins and beats like this ultimate conquering babyface that'll never be seen in the industry again in Stone Cold Steve Austin, this marvel of a fucking character, and this is sort of his swan song. But this documentary undercuts all that in my memory because he talks about how he pushes Earl Hebner away and says, "You can't hear this, you can't hear this," and he says the thing to him, and then the documentary crew asks him what he says, and he's like, "I'm not telling you." And then they cut to an interview with Austin, and they ask Austin what did he say, and Austin said, "Yeah, he told me he loved me." And it's a really cute moment, and how you don't have a lot of friends in this industry, but The Rock is actually one of his friends. It adds so much more dynamic to this match outside of just the match, which is pretty good. It is limited because Austin is really like banged up at this point. This is his last match. There's not a lot of like wow or pomp in this match. It's just sort of Austin and Rock are going to beat Austin and Rock for 18 minutes, and then it ends on a very long finishing stretch of a lot of finishes. There's a cool spot where Rock gets the vest at some point, and then eventually that comes undone, and just prancing around, and it's really good. I don't know if it's like, that's why I haven't rated it, because in my head it's like a 5-star match definitely, because it means so much to me, but like I don't know if I could give it more than 4 stars for being what it is. Personal significance is a push though. This match is charged with emotion symbolically, but the crowd isn't all there, and the match isn't all that. That's true, the crowd isn't as into it as I remembered or hoped. That's definitely a thing. They're into the entrances again. They're into Rock and Austin, but like periodically throughout the match. When Austin kicks out of the rock bottoms, they kind of come alive, but then like he doesn't have a comeback after that. It just takes 3 rock bottoms to beat him. For the people elbow spot, they come into it. But yeah, this added dynamic of Austin like going to the hospital the night before and not telling anybody but JR, and JR being Austin's best friend, and JR doing commentary, and the monologue that JR goes on as Austin comes to the ring is like incredible, and you can tell that like he's frustrated with King because King doesn't know that this is Austin's last match and that he was in hospital last night and they're best friends, and that this is like probably the most important match for JR to call in his career. It's going to mean a lot to him, and the King is still like doing his over the top heel persona, but like JR forces like this entire entrance, like because Austin marches to the ring really quick, the BMF walk, the bad motherfucker walk he calls it, coming to the ring. It takes him like 30 seconds to get down this long fucking winding ramp, whereas it takes like everybody else that night like a minute to get down there. JR forces like the whole 30-second walk. He just goes on this monologue, and it culminates in like it's like the best walking to the ring monologue. Like if you're gonna watch anything, like you might just watch the entrances to this match, because JR walking down, like as Austin's walking down, and it's like a back shot. I remember specifically of Austin, the crowd going insane, and him walking down away from the camera before he turns, because it's a baseball stadium, so you got to turn like that, and just going on that side. You can tell that JR is giving like a eulogy for his career. He's doing like, and he's done everything, and he will go down in history as the baddest son of a bitch in like to ever grace this sport or whatever. And because he usually says SOB, but the fact that he says son of a bitch and then he like commits to saying it is so fucking awesome. As he comes to the ring, it's like the greatest probably 30 seconds in commentary wrestling history. I love it. It's fucking, that's a 5-star thing. That's a 10 out of 10. That might make the match a fucking 5-star match. It's incredible. And throughout the match, it's like that. JR is like really putting over Austin and everything, knowing that it's his last match, when presumably King doesn't know, and like he's just doing the over the top, like The Rock's in Hollywood, WrestleMania the movie, The Rock's the greatest or whatever. When clearly to everybody else involved, there's a lot more riding on this match. So as a story, this is one of like the best wrestling stories, as a combination of the narrative and the meta-narrative and the commentary and who these characters are coming into it. And I need to mention, there's a promo. This might be my favorite promo of all time. Early in the night, The Rock gives a promo building up the match that happens in wrestling sometimes, if there's still people listening that don't watch wrestling, where they'll have interviews, and he does one of his ones with Coach, and these are like famous because he used to do these with Kevin Kelly too, where he would just like clown on the dude interviewing him and do a bunch of commentary. But this one's overly serious. The Rock is now a heel, and the Coach is kind of a heel. No, I don't think he is a heel at this point, but he doesn't pick on the Coach too much. He kind of does, and he starts the interview being The Rock, over the top jokes. They kind of hit. The crowd is reacting to him because they kind of hate The Rock, because this is 2003 heel Hollywood sellout Rock, and they're really into it. And then there's like a turn halfway through the promo where The Rock gets really serious, and it's really good. He goes on the monologue. Should I just do it? Because I kind of know it off by heart because I've listened to this thing. Wait, what does he say first? I can't get the order right, but he does the Act 1 and Act 2, they don't matter. The only thing that matters, everybody remembers Act 3. That's one of my favorite promo lines ever, because he's talking about how he's from Hollywood, and Austin's beat him the last 2 times at WrestleMania in the 2 main events. They're coming into the 3rd one, and Act 1 and Act 2, the first 2 matches, don't matter. The only thing that matters, everybody remembers Act 3. The delivery on that line is fucking incredible. Then, like, the ending of the promo is also... I should took the like, he does his thing, like, not afraid to bleed, not afraid of something, not afraid to bleed, gonna beat that bald-headed bastard, guaranteed. He goes on one of those monologues that it's like a parody of the Ric Flair thing, where he goes down the pie-eating, trailblazing, he goes down the whole fucking road, and it gets there, and it's like my favorite rendition of that ever. And then the ending of the promo is like, and then The Rock will have done it all. Finally, because that's his fucking thing. He would say, finally. And the way he says finally, it's like, with solace, it's like this super over the top, like, dramatic heel Rock gets, like, humble at the end of this promo before he does the entrance for Austin's last match. And it's sort of like the grandiose nature of it all. I was going to mention something else. Was it the video package? But the video package is real good, I remember. But what part? There was a specific part I really wanted to point out. But fuck, I forgot. Because I kind of want to say everything there is to say about this match. Because I know so much and have thought so much about this match this storyline, this moment. What was it from the goddamn video package? I think they played the Limp Bizkit song, but not My Way. That's for the other one. This is the I'm addicted to crack. Yeah, I'm a crack addict. I'm addicted to cracking skulls is the fucking Limp Bizkit line. You gotta love it. It's The Rock's line in the promo about how this is the greatest rivalry this industry has ever seen. I don't remember if that's from the video package or the promo beforehand, but that's a really good line where he like says with sincerity that this like the Austin versus Rock rivalry is the greatest this industry has ever seen. And like people say that for a lot of things, but like you believe it when The Rock says it about this feud. So much goes into this to the point where I can't rate it. It's just what it is. And I don't really have anything else to say about it. Moving on to WrestleMania a year later with WrestleMania 20. Evolution versus the Rock and Sock Connection. I have very fun memories of this match. This match is fucking incredible. It's not meant to be a 5-star classic, so you can't give it 5 stars, but as a 4-star match, and as just a vehicle for The Rock and fucking Ric Flair to play off of each other, it's fucking unbelievable. Evolution is Batista, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair in this match. Triple H was also a member of that faction, but he's in the main event. We'll get to that in a second. Versus the Rock and Sock Connection, which is The Rock and Mick Foley. It's this 3-on-2 handicap match that happens in the middle of the card at WrestleMania 20. It's The Rock's last WrestleMania match before the Cena matches. It's the second last Mick Foley match, I think, because he has the Edge match 2 years later. The star parent. This might be the most star-studded WrestleMania match of all time. Batista and Randy Orton are at the very beginnings of their career here, and like Randy Orton will go on to be like a 15-time at this point world champion, and Batista would main event literally the next year's WrestleMania, and have a shorter career, but also a very notable one. Plus Mick Foley and The Rock and Ric Flair, 16 9-time, and Foley's like a 3-time world champion. Incredible stuff. And just, it's basically Madison Square Garden, first of all. So they're on fire. Evolution's only WrestleMania entrance. The fucking thing hits and it's awesome. Batista always freaks out in the entrances and it's really cool. You can tell he's fucking on top of the world. Randy's trying. He looks a little nervous. He's trying not to look nervous and smirky. This is Randy's first WrestleMania match and Batista's first WrestleMania match. And Flair just comes out and he's owning the fucking joint, and the joint knows that they are fucking being owned because they are on the top for Ric Flair. Ric Flair is probably the most over person in this match, but I think I say that. The Rock also has a really great pre-match promo for this match. Him and Foley do it. It's really good. And Foley, they're both over. It was basically a Foley versus Randy Orton feud. They would have a big street fight the next month at Backlash, I believe. I might rewatch that match too. As the blow-off for there, this is sort of the midway point, but just as a vehicle for The Rock and Ric Flair to steal the show as they're right here. I should probably look through this. Hold on, I got distracted for a second. I should probably read through what I've written here. This makes good on the promise of Western wrestling. I think this is, we talk about Eastern versus Western wrestling. Western wrestling, when we talk about Eastern wrestling, we're just talking about Japanese wrestling. And when we talk about Western wrestling, we're just talking about American wrestling. But Western wrestling, American wrestling is very over the top. It's very campy, right? Whereas Japanese wrestling is very much more toned down and strives to be more realistic. But this is sort of the promise, making good on the false promise of Western wrestling, of sort of like the personalities, these 5 fucking personalities here, 2 that are still developing and incubating, but The Rock and Flair mostly. Just like becoming like, and the like tagging in and out and the way that keeps things fresh and the pops for different people when they come in. It's like, this is the promise of this over-the-top character-driven like narratives that wrestling really delivers on, especially in this time period. This match at WrestleMania 20 is 2004. It's real fucking sick. The Rock and Ric Flair steal the show here, but make no mistake, Flair is the most over man in this match. There's still this undercurrent of anti-Rock stuff going on, even in 2004, because he like barely comes back for this feud. I think he appears on the Raw before WrestleMania, or maybe 2 Raws to build up this match. He's not back in any serious capacity. He's fully in Hollywood at this point. Again, this will be his last match. This is his first match in like 11 months, and then he's not going to have another match for like 11 years. Not 11 years. Fucking... What is it? 2012. In 8 years. So he's like, this is the swan song of his career almost, in terms of the bulk part of his career. And Flair is full-time at this point. He's fully in Evolution. So I don't know where I was going with the Rock thing. That's why there's like an undercurrent of like, fuck the Rock, he left us. Whereas Flair is here and he's not going nowhere. But Flair being the most over person in this match is just fucking sick. Like, he's not supposed to be the focal point of this match. It's supposed to be mostly a Randy Orton and Mick Foley affair with The Rock coming in, and Batista's supposed to be the big goon, who he basically is. He doesn't get much of the spotlight, and Flair is just supposed to be like the crafty veteran that helps out Randy, but he is overshadowing Randy especially, and basically the entire match, and the crowd is fucking loving it, because Madison Square Garden knows who the fuck Ric Flair is, and they're very excited that he's here. It's sick. Everyone plays their role great. Spelled the wrong there. Randy is a sniveling weasel. Batista is the enforcer. Foley particularly, all his shit looks good. Foley, I was nervous because Rick Foley kind of gets a reputation in these older matches where he's come out. He's supposedly retired in the year 2000. We're in 2004 now and he's wrestling. So there's like a reputation post 2000 that some of his matches were sloppy. He was on fire in this match. I haven't seen a lot of Mick Foley big time matches since like in the last 5 years, since when I was going back and watching a bunch of old stuff when I was like 12. So I can't remember if Mick Foley was that good, but everything in this match, every offensive thing from Foley looks like $1 million. He hits hard. He's doing the dives off the apron, the elbow. Looks like a fucking $1 million the way he's doing this shit. He's fast. He speeds up in the right places. He's really good at selling. He's very sympathetic. It's fucking sick. Foley is very good in this match. And if I watch more matches, maybe he's really good in everything. Maybe a sudden finish here. The finish kind of comes out of nowhere. I remember because this is one of my favorite WrestleManias. I used to watch this WrestleMania all the time as a kid. I remember like the finish being really iconic to me, of like Foley gets hit with an RKO and then gets pinned 1, 2, 3 really quickly. He kicks out right after 3 and then sits up as in like a disappointment. As like Randy like stole one. He got away real quick with a victory. Obviously you want Randy to have the big victory at WrestleMania. They were building around Randy. He would win the belt in fucking 6 months at SummerSlam. But yeah, this time through, it kind of felt like it came too quick. I feel like this match could have used like 2 more minutes and built up to a proper finish maybe. But like Rock isn't doing the job, and Evolution has to win, so Foley has to do the job, and they don't want Randy to just outrightly beat him, because that's a big downer. I don't know, it feels like we're on the high of like Ric Flair and The Rock going back and forth. Like Rock is doing the Flair strut and Flair tries to do the people's elbow, and it's just like these iconic, charismatic, like mega stars playing off of each other. And then you sort of go back down to like Mick Foley and Randy's feud, which it works really well. It's just the finish is kind of weird. Like the highlight of the match, the biggest pops in the match are like for Flair and The Rock fucking with each other. So maybe a sudden finish was the only way you could go. I don't know. The finish isn't... I'm a little conflicted on the finish. But we gave that one 4 stars. We didn't give anything under 4 stars. Speaking of 4s, this is the 4th match we gave 5 stars to, and the most recent one I rewatched, which was the main event of later that night at WrestleMania 20. Benoit versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels. The forgotten WrestleMania main event because Chris Benoit is in it. If you're not a wrestling fan, I guess Google Chris Benoit to see why the WWE pretends he doesn't exist. Awesome build, a great build into a single moment, and that moment works. This is basically the crowning of Chris Benoit. He wins the Rumble in 2004, heads into Mania, switches brands to Raw, inserts himself in the Triple H and Shawn Michaels feud, the first ever triple threat main event to a WrestleMania, the first ever triple threat world championship match at a WrestleMania. It's real fucking good. Like the video package for this, the Broken Dream, I really like that song. It's embedded into my brain because I watched this fucking pay-per-view so much as a kid, so that theme song is forever in my fucking brain, and hearing it again in the video package before this match was so sick. A lot of the lines from the video package are also ingrained in my mind, like What's one of them? Why can't I fucking think of one of them? That's the real issue. Fuck. There's one where Benoit says, like, we better make sure Triple H isn't walking out of the garden with the title, which the way he says it is really cool. Fuck. Because there's two parts. There's two parts of the, Oh, I have a to-watch thing down here. I forgot about that. There's two parts to the video package, right? Sorry, I'm a little distracted. There's the first part, which is really dramatic, and it's almost over the top dramatic, and then it breaks into the theme song of WrestleMania, which is that Broken Dream song, where there's Austin is in it and all this stuff. I've completely lost my train of thought. Whoops. Fuck. I literally can't remember a fucking line from this goddamn video package. I promise it's great, because I remember I watched it, I think before I rewatched this one, I rewatched the video package, at the middle of the night at some point, because it got recommended to me. And I was like, alright, I have to fucking rewatch this match at some point. It's really cool. Benoit is like the underdog. He's like the man. He's short. He's the man that should never be WWE champion, that the company would never get behind. He's sort of like got the reputation of being the best wrestler in the world. He's the workhorse. He's a good hand. But he's not going to be put with the big stars in the main event of WrestleMania. He wins the Royal Rumble, which means he has to. He switches brands to Raw. Nobody's beaten Triple H in 2 years, really. Goldberg beat him for the belt for a little bit, but then he just got it back. Michaels and Triple H are in a blood feud, and they are for 3 years, and this is right before they blow it off at Bad Blood in 3 months after this. I want to watch the rematch for this match before we do the next video of these, because the rematch is in Canada at Backlash, and it's really good. I remember, because Michaels is more of the big heel than Triple H, because it's in Canada and the thing. Oh, there's a great spot throughout this match of the sharpshooter of Shawn Michaels screwed over Bret Hart, and this is only what? Oh my god, it actually 7 years after that, but everybody remembers that. It's obviously an iconic moment in wrestling history. So Benoit goes for the sharpshooter a bunch, and it gets broken up, and then he finally gets it later towards the end of the match, and there's a massive pop in the garden when he does that. It's basically a massive build-up to will the company actually let Benoit win? Eddie Guerrero had won the belt the month before. Eddie Guerrero and Benoit are best friends. They have a cool video, not a video package, but a promo backstage before the match, where Eddie pretends to not believe in Chris Benoit to fire him up, and then they have a really cool moment where it's we're both going to hold the world championships at the end of the night, when they're both shorter and not the traditional guys the WWE would get behind. And it's sort of this feel-good moment of the underdog stars rising to the top in 2004. And it's real fucking cool. So basically this entire night is built up to the Madison Square Garden has come to Madison Square Garden, the crowd, to fucking see if Chris Benoit will beat Triple H or Shawn Michaels, two dudes that don't do a lot of jobs, don't lose a lot in the main event of WrestleMania. And it's basically a build, and his finisher is a submission, so it's they're in the submission for 2 minutes to see if Triple H is going to tap out. The tension is overblown. Eventually Triple H taps out, and you get the massive release of Benoit wins. The crowd goes fucking insane, and then him and Eddie get to hug in the middle of the ring in the main event of WrestleMania and have this moment that nobody ever thought they would have, and everybody feels really good for them. This moment, after the fact, is more tragic than bittersweet, which is supposed to be what it is. It's supposed to be a moment of adulation. Again, JR does a very good job about saying Benoit has finally done it. He goes the 15-year journey, and JR again is fucking incredible. If there is one through line on this list, since we were watching a bunch of matches mostly from this sort of period, JR is fucking incredible at his job. Talking about when he wins, Benoit holding the belt up, and JR goes on another classic monologue. But then they have the hug after the match, but it's made a little tragic in retrospect because both of them are dead 2 years after this. No, Benoit dies in 2007, so 3 years after this, Benoit kills his kid, kills his wife, and then kills himself a year after Eddie Guerrero overdoses on drugs. So it's just looking back at this now, a lot of wrestling fans have trouble watching any Chris Benoit matches, and especially this night, even with Eddie matches, who Eddie didn't do anything wrong. Of course, he just died of a drug overdose, which is just tragic. So a lot of wrestling fans don't like this moment now, and it sort of like makes them sad to watch it. I don't know, I can divorce my feelings from it and just feel good when watching it. The tragedy is even still in the back of my mind, but for a lot of people, they can't deal with it, that these two are hugging with streamers coming down and like the biggest celebration. And Benoit's entrance song is really good, and like when it gets to the later verses in the celebration after the fact, after it's been playing for 3 minutes and it's just making that noise, whatever, the fucking... It's just like, it's pretty fucking emotional. It's pretty fucking spectacular. But the match building up to that point is really good. Again, it feels like a real struggle. Benoit hits really hard throughout the match. The point, like, it's supposed to be Benoit is supposed to be a babyface, Triple H is supposed to be heel, and Shawn Michaels is supposed to be a babyface. But coming into the match, it's kind of like we need to give all the babyface folk into Chris Benoit. So Michaels and Triple H at some point reunite and like team up and put Benoit through a table. And like there's this big spot of like the crowd. Like then they try to have a singles match for like 5 minutes while Benoit is selling that he's just been put through the table. Everybody's bleeding at this point. It's really cool. And Benoit like gets the fuck back up, and the crowd for the whole 5 minutes while these two are trying to have a singles match are fucking cheering for Benoit. And the spot where Benoit finally gets back up and like interferes with a pin or whatever is like the crowd goes insane. And then from there it's just we're going to the finish. There's at some point I think Benoit has the crossface in, or it might be the sharpshooter, and Shawn Michaels comes over with a fucking sweet chin music. That spot was fucking incredible. I think there's a part where Triple H hits a pedigree and everybody thinks, oh no, fucking Triple H is going to retain here. And they like have this moment of like, oh no, no, no. Then somebody kicks out. It's really cool. But Benoit getting the crossface in, and then like Triple H nearly gets the ropes and he does the flip back over thing. It's really fucking sick, and that ends up going towards the finish. There's other spots. I feel like there are spots from the beginning of the match that I sort of skipped over. But this match is like incredible. I wasn't sure if this match was as good as like some people say. Some people say that this match isn't that good, and I was like, it's kind of like a debated thing how good this match is. I was very glad to go back and watch it. Feel like it's really engaging the whole time. It really feels like a WrestleMania main event. It feels like a big match. It feels really good. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Benoit in the main event of WrestleMania. It's fucking sick. It's like real cool. Triple H at the top of his like annoying heel persona. Shawn Michaels being Shawn Michaels, but also kind of being the third act here, and Benoit being there. It's fucking sick. I don't know if there's anything else to say. The celebration afterwards is great. I feel like I'm underselling JR a little bit for this match. Like that closing monologue and him throughout the match is going really good. The progression of everybody getting beat up and everybody slowly bleeding is also really well handled. I think this match is nearly like 25 minutes or something. It's really good. It's long, but it's really good. We also have, that's all the matches so far, but we also have a to-watch thing. I forgot I made this. This is just sort of notes. I started going off. I started figuring out I could do all of the matches and do like videos talking about, let's rank all of the CM Punk versus John Cena matches of all time. I really want to rewatch this match to remember if it is as good as I remember it being. This NXT feud, I started thinking about NXT rewatches, and I was like, oh, I gotta do the girl. Like, I really like it's really early NXT stuff, like 2013, 2014, Full Sail NXT stuff. So the Cesaro Sami Zayn feud would be something I would like to do. I think the versus CM Punk and John Cena match is legitimately the Money in the Bank match in 2011. It might not be. If so, I'll watch those ones beforehand. I'll have to check some of those index websites. And then these. Obviously, Sasha Banks is my favorite wrestler of all time. I do want to watch some knockout stuff. Some TNA stuff, we definitely got to go back on that stuff, because there's some fucking outstanding TNA stuff, especially from that period. Like going back and tracking the women's evolution in NXT and bringing it to the main roster could be a lot of fun. All the Sasha and Becky matches, all the Sasha and Bayley matches, all the Sasha and Charlotte matches, and then ranking all of them would be cool. We'll have to see on those fronts. Outside of that, there's also the rematch for this match, the follow-up to this match. So 2 Backlash 2004 matches that I want to see. The other Rock and Austin matches are ones that I kind of want to watch. The rest are like Michaels versus Kurt Angle from that one WrestleMania is one I want to rewatch. If you've made it this far and you got matches that you think I should rewatch, there's a bunch of New Japan stuff that I want to rewatch and then apply here and see how they rank up. There's other CM Punk matches, other Brock Lesnar matches that I'd like to watch. None really spring to mind. We covered all the big Ric Flair WrestleMania matches, I think. The older ones, like he has a Randy Savage one. Some older WWE stuff maybe we could get into. The rest of the Taker Streak matches, like the Edge and Batista match, all the Triple H matches I might want to watch. More CM Punk, definitely. Michaels. Some other John Cena matches, too. There's a bunch of stuff I want to watch. But at this point, how long was this fucking video? No. Oh, I thought I fucking wasn't recording. Oh, my God. I nearly had a heart attack because I checked Oh, yeah, you can see it because I'm recording on OBS. I was like, oh, no. Oh, no. I thought it would have all gone to waste. So I have no idea. Oh, no. We've nearly been on for 2 fucking hours. What the fuck? Well, that's a whole fucking thing. I guess we got to end. I was supposed to record other stuff in here tonight. I guess that's not happening now. With that being, I just fucking shocked myself 3 times there. We will get back to this. I don't know. It might be like another month before we do another one of these. I'm curious. If you made it this far, make a comment about anything. Any match that I reference, anything you have to add, somebody comment so I know that somebody is listening to these and somebody cares. But yeah, with that being said, that's our wrestling index. That's our first step in rating every match I've seen. I'll see you for another one of these. Welcome to Secondary Entertainment, I guess. Do we say support links in the description below? Thanks now? I know I kind of just said it. How about I just say goodbye?